When Haruto dies in a train accident, he wakes up as a peasant boy, thinking his life is over. It turns out he has godlike magic powers, which he uses to become the best at the Magic Royal Academy, making the king's daughters who once ridiculed him fall in love. Haruto's sister cries when Haruto moves away, making Haruto promise to marry her when they both grow up. In the present, Haruto's bus suddenly goes out of control and he is hit by a train. As he dies, he remembers saying he'll always protect his sister. When Haruto wakes up, he's in the body of a little boy. Ryo, inside a medieval house, he wanders throughout the house confused, and has flashbacks to his previous life. He remembers a bus, but can't recall what a bus is. Ryo's masters walk in and start eating. Ryo is hungry, but he's forced to eat from a bush outside to stay alive, because his masters don't care about him. Ryo gets confused with Haruto's memories again, but reassures himself that he needs to avenge his mom and that he isn't Haruto. Ryo thinks of his mom, who was killed for having black hair, a trait from their kingdom that gives Ryo his godlike powers. A group of priests see Ryo and start bullying him, saying he stinks. A girl named Celia walks out and is nice to Ryo. She asks for a girl with purple hair, but Ryo is scared to tell them anything because they have nice clothes. The priests decide to get peasant clothes to blend in. Celia uses a magic spell to search the area, making Ryo surprised. He starts glowing in blue flames from the spell, which means he has a huge magic potential, even though he doesn't know spells. His flames are bigger than the other priests, meaning his power level is higher. Celia gives Ryo money for the information. Ryo is shocked by the huge amount and runs back into the house. When he walks through, he's stabbed by an assassin, who has killed all of his masters. The assassin raises his sword, ready to kill Ryo, but the god of the world appears and tells Ryo that he will be taught how to use his magic powers. She tells Ryo to use the blue light to make himself stronger. Ryo pushes the assassin back with his new powers. The assassin activates physical enhancement magic and runs to Ryo, but Ryo flips around and easily batters the assassin, rendering him useless. The assassin is overwhelmed by his power and asks who he is but can't get an answer before he's flipped over by Ryo. Ryo sees a bag tied up with the purple-haired girl in the corner of the room. She asks Ryo to take her to the castle and that her dad will reward Ryo generously. She passes out and Ryo carries her to the priests. The priests slap Ryo and take back Flora. The girl questions Ryo, but thinks he's lying and that he kidnapped her. Ryo uses his insane strength to remove her hands but is almost stabbed by the head priest, and the girl says that she's going to charge him with sexual assault for grabbing her. The royal guards find a man in the house who's still alive. When he's brought out, he's instantly killed by a mysterious man. At the castle, Ryo is imprisoned and questioned by Charles Arbor, the vice captain of the Royal Knights. He tries to get Ryo to confess to his crimes and starts whacking Ryo with a metal club when he refuses. Flora wakes up and asks to bring Ryo in, when she learns he's being investigated. When Celia sees the state of Ryo and makes the guard free Ryo, Celia heals Ryo immediately. When Ryo wakes up, he realizes Celia healed him and thanks her. Ryo is brought to the king and announced as the savior of the princess. The king tells Ryo that he'll go to the Royal Academy on a scholarship. Celia decides to tutor Ryo after school to teach him how to read or write. When the other students find out that he's from the slums, they immediately hate him and turn away their heads. Celia starts the lesson. When Ryo isn't able to handle the simple math problems, his classmates laugh at him. After school, Ryo goes to Celia for his private tutoring. Celia tells Ryo she's 12, but is a professor because she skipped many grades. Ryo finishes the problems he couldn't do in class in an instant. It turns out he's the only one in his class who can do the problems. Ryo thinks that it makes sense since he went to university. In his sword fighting class, the teacher asks Ryo to fight him. Ryo channels his memories of his life as Haruto and dives in with amazing speed. His classmates are shocked at his insane strength. Even though he's a peasant, his master is surprised by his sword abilities and tells him that he wants him to become a knight. Ryo turns down his offer, shocking his classmates. On test day, Ryo quickly fills out his paper, making his classmates mad. When Ryo leaves class, the other students look down on him for being a peasant. Ryo thinks of Haruto's first love who left him during high school for another guy. Ryo assures himself that he's not Haruto. When class rankings come out, Ryo is number 1 on the list. His classmates think there was a mistake or that he cheated. The girl who accused Ryo of sexual assault stands up for Ryo, saying it's because of Ryo's hard work that he has the best test scores. Celia is worried about Ryo because he doesn't have friends to cope with the bullying, but Ryo tells her that he has her. Celia fumes and says he's treating her like a child but says she doesn't mind. An exhibition tournament for the best knight starts and the teacher calls out students as representatives. When Ryo is called out, his classmate gets mad and says he can't accept it and that since Ryo can't use magic, he shouldn't participate. After school, Celia realizes that Ryo is taller than her and remarks that it's been 5 years. Ryo tells Celia that after graduation he wants to go on a journey because the country is hard for him to live in. Celia asks him to work at the academy. Ryo says he can't, because when she gets married, he'll tarnish her reputation. Ryo tells her she's a charming woman and she blushes. Ryo says he wants to go back to his parents' homeland, the Yagumo region. The tournament starts with Alfred Emerald as the referee. Ryo starts the tournament and his classmate tells him to not tarnish the academy reputation. Charles Arbor, his torturer, is his first opponent. Emerald is surprised by Ryo's unusual kendo stance. The battle starts and Ryo stays calm, parrying the blows. Ryo knocks the sword out of his opponent's hand and wins the duel. His opponent tries to refute the loss, but Emerald shames him and says a loss is a loss, making him admit defeat. Afterwards, Charles gets angry that he lost. Charles says that he thought Ryo was involved in Flora's kidnapping. Charles' friend remembers the incident because he was the assassin. Celia waits for Ryo to leave school to celebrate with him, but Ryo walks past her. A girl confesses her love to Ryo, saying he was gallant during his sword fight. Celia watches and feels jealous that Ryo is getting attention. Ryo tells the class that they will use lightning in today's class. Ryo's classmate says that Ryo can't use magic, so Celia asks him to use a lightning spell. Celia says they're still far from mastery and that with artifacts they can use multiple spells at once. Ryo imitates the magic technique in his hand. Even though he can't use formulas, he can see the flow of magic and copy it. The magic assessment practicum starts. The classes have to compete with each other to make it to the goal in the middle of the mountain. The bully has a secret course since the soldiers from his house patrol the area frequently. Ryo is forced to carry everyone's luggage during the journey. Flora grabs the courage to talk to Ryo and asks if she can carry some of the luggage, and Ryo says he's good. Goblins appear in the forest, and the class uses artifacts to boost their physical ability and take down the goblins. Ryo notices the assassin in the forest, making the assassin surprised. He decides to test Ryo's abilities. The class gets cornered by giant orcs at a cliff and the bully is stabbed by a spear, knocking Flora off the cliff. Ryo activates his magic abilities and rescues her but falls off the cliff in the process. The commander tells the vanguard to activate their physical abilities and for the back line to use long-range magic. The monsters are killed for the blitz shots of magic. On the surface, Stuart blames Ryo for pushing him into Flora, saying he saved Flora to avoid being convicted. Ryo watches from the bushes, trying to decide what to do. Flora tells the class they can't move on before finding Ryo. She says she'll save Ryo, even if she's alone. That's when a giant boss orc teleports in front of the class. Princess Christina uses a thunderball, but the boss bats it away. The class charges up an Iceland spell, but the boss instantly dodges it. The vanguard is also batted away. Princess Flora decides to stay back to heal the classmates. The boss finds her and right when it's about to kill her, Ryo jumps in, cutting off its arm. He activates his magic powers and slashes at the boss, but his attack has no effect. Ryo and the boss exchange blows, but neither can gain the upper hand. The boss slams its axe on the ground and Ryo uses the opportunity to fly up and cut off its head. The assassin looks at Ryo from the sky. At the castle, Celia realizes that Ryo has gone missing. They decide not to publicize the incident because it might weaken Stuart's house, and they decide to blame Ryo. Ryo comes into Celia's room at night, causing Celia to cry and hug him. Celia gets mad on Ryo's behalf for the false charge and Ryo says it's the reality of not being a noble. Ryo tells Celia he's glad he met her, but he needs to leave. Celia cries and Ryo tells her he will write her letters under the alias Haruto. Celia makes him promise to stay safe. When he leaves, she bursts into tears sobbing. Thanks for making it so far. If you like what we are doing, consider subscribing for free. Until next time, take care.